Okay, so this is going to be another unscripted ramble, real quick. So the topic is basically trying not to waste time in your practice, and once again, no visual aids, so you can click to another tab, do whatever, or just click off because you're not interested. So something that's been on my mind a lot is this is such a niche thing. Nobody's going to care about this, but I constantly see parallels between lifting weights and music practice. And it's weird how many things that coming, because I didn't start like lifting weights and trying to lose weight. And, for a little information, I used to be around 300 pounds, which I'm 5'6". That puts my BMI, and that I would have been around a BMI of 48. I was a very unhealthy person. At some point, I started trying to lose some weight, and then just lifting, and then I got kind of way into it. But I came into lifting with a really, the practice mentality that comes from music. It's a very structured, discipline type thing. They're both very similar in that way. But then I started noticing, even beyond those parallels, I started noticing things where there are certain disciplinary things within lifting related stuff that lifting does better than music. One of those is periodization and how you organize and structure your workout routines. I'm not going to talk about that one right now because that one's a little bigger than what I'm ready to talk about right at the moment. But that is one of those things that I feel like people who lift focus a lot more on how they organize their lifting, and it has a lot to do with them recovering from things. You need time for your body to recover. So this is a little related to that recovery thing because while we're not talking about, having chest day and back day and things like that because you're waiting on one part to recover to get the other one, you don't necessarily have that with piano or instruments in general. You don't always have to recover a thing. It is good to structure things better, but like I said, that's a bigger topic. But what you do need is recovery. So the thing that both of them share is that you don't get better while you're doing them. People think you're getting better while you're practicing. You might notice, I started today and I was playing like shit, and then by the end I was playing it fast and accurately. That usually doesn't stick around. That's an effect where the next day you're not exactly where you left off. And it's a similar thing, anybody who's into lifting, you might understand the concept of the pump, where after lifting, your muscles are very engorged and large. That's not their natural resting state. They're really full of blood, essentially. And, a couple of hours after the gym, you're not nearly as jacked looking as you were while you were in the gym. It's the same thing with piano. You practice and you're playing super good in that practice session. By the next morning, you're not there. But no, the bigger topic is that you need that recovery. You get better while you're resting. With the gym, you get better while you're sleeping and your body is using the food that you use to repair what you've done to your muscles, and that's when you get bigger, incrementally. And with music, it's the same thing. When you rest, your brain is sort of rewiring all of the things that you fed it, and it's trying to figure out, how do I do that thing a little faster? How do I make this connection a little faster? How do I make little things happen more efficiently? But you have to rest to do that. And so related to this resting thing is a concept that I think pianists don't think about, and luckily more gym bros do think about. It's the concept of junk volume. So in lifting, there's this idea that you can only train a certain body part a certain amount before, it's just not going to respond to any more stimulus. There's no point. I could just go do 1,000 bicep curls in a day. It doesn't do anything. My bicep is done. I can just keep going. But essentially, there's a point where you have given it so much stimulus that it has got to rest before it can do any more. You've done the maximum amount of stimulus. It's like you're pouring water into a cup. The cup can only get so full, and you have to wait until you pour the cup out or drink from the cup before you can put more water into that cup. Same thing. I could train my bicep to a certain degree, and then at some point I have to rest and wait for it to recover. It's the same thing with piano, but I feel like musicians are really shitty about realizing this. you can only get so much better at any given piece of your practice. This is a big part of why I try to vary up my practice. I only spend 5 to 10 minutes on any given section of a piece of music or technical exercise. You can only give your brain so much stimulus before you need to rest for it to grow. And so, the common example I would give is like, okay, let's say, just because metronomes make it easy to make analogies here, let's say you started working on a section and it was 60 beats a minute, and you kept practicing for 30 minutes and you got it up to 120 beats a minute. And then the next day you come back and you can barely play it at 70. What was all that you did getting it up to 120? What good did that do? That was junk volume. You gave stimulus that didn't really contribute. And related to that, you could have done some damage too. I mean, that's the thing with bodybuilding. You can overtrain a muscle and cause an injury. Or you can cause systemic recovery issues, which is kind of a bigger issue with lifting. You're not going to get that from bicep curls, but you can risk injury, and you can just risk all kinds of weird recovery issues where now you gave it too much stimulus, not for more growth, but now you're going to have to wait that much longer so that your bicep isn't so sore that you can't scratch your head. And the same thing with piano. You just kept practicing until you were exhausted. You probably started practicing very sloppily, and now you've built in some of those habits. You might have started practicing with a lot of tension, and now you've built that in. You've got bad technique built in. A similar thing can happen with lifting, where you build in bad technique and you get a bad connection to a muscle. So you need to make sure that you're not overtraining. You're not doing junk volume in your music practice. At some point, you have crossed a threshold. And the thing is, you can't really know where it's at. You cross it long before you feel like you crossed it. And it's one of those things where I guess I've dialed it in. I use the timers to limit myself just to make sure that I'm not going over the line. I would rather undershoot than overshoot, because I can't afford to waste that much time and mental energy. And unless there's a crazy deadline, there's no point in me overshooting that line and wasting that practice time that's basically junk volume. Just go a little under. But yeah, you're just going to get a lot more out of practicing a little bit more focused and a little less time and no junk volume spent towards any given thing. And you're not going to get sloppy. You're not going to get tense. You're going to give your fingers time to figure out more efficient ways to do the thing that you're trying to tell them to do. And if you don't go too fast and you don't build in that tension, at least you're not making yourself more consistent at playing with tension. Because that's the thing, is like your brain doesn't know the difference. It just knows how to replicate what you taught it to do. If you keep practicing it wrong, including just, you might be getting the right notes, but you've got so much tension in your hands, and now your hands are super tight. You're going to hit all these weird plateaus, and you're going to potentially even injure yourself. I mean, it's not the hugest risk, but like long term, you could do some damage. So don't do that. It should feel easy. And I think most people have played for a long time and run into a situation where, they've played a piece that they've gotten it to a given tempo, the mark tempo or whatever, the performance tempo, and then they just keep playing it, and it gets easier and easier. It starts to just feel easy in their hands. Maybe when they first got it to tempo and they felt like it's at a performance level, it was a little hard and inconsistent and tight, but over time they kind of worked that out because it wasn't a crazy fast tempo. Well, what if you just let yourself get there a little slower and you never had any of that tension? Because for a lot of people, that tension never lets go, and that just becomes a fixed part of their technique. And that kind of tension will create a situation where you hit speed plateaus really hard. That's the biggest one, is people want to play faster, and the glib answer people will say is, well, you play faster by practicing slower. That's not telling you the mechanism. The mechanism is about that efficiency, that little bit of efficiency that you get all the time. And so practicing slowly lets you focus on that little bit of efficiency, and that efficiency adds up over time, and your brain just gets better at minimizing motion and using the least number of muscles and the least amount of tension and the least amount of mental effort to execute that. And then, yeah, you can feel that super easy mode all the way to the top. You don't ever have to hit a crazy point of struggling during your practice, which, is a little different than lifting, where you have to intentionally go to a point that is very much beyond comfort, but you need to understand how to do it safely. With good technique, it's a similar thing. But yeah, with your piano practice, just, take it slow and don't worry about that. And don't do the junk volume, which we've gotten off on a tangent. But yeah, junk volume was the point. Don't waste a lot of extra time on something, because you have to rest to recover. That's when it happens. Your muscles get bigger when you sleep, not while you're in the gym. Your piano playing gets better when you sleep, not while you're practicing the piano. Anyway, that was the point. Thanks.